Welcome to your virtual tour. You have selected the Louvre Museum. Bienvenue! What painting would you like to select? You have selected The Wedding at Canna. Please go to the next page to begin your tour. Welcome. Bienvenue, mesdames et messieurs, au musée du Louvre. S'il vous plaît, sélectez ton langue préférée. You have selected English. The rest of your tour will be conducted in this language. Bienvenue. The Wedding at Canna is currently located on the first floor of the Louvre Museum, room 711 of the Denon Wing, across from the famous painting of Mona Lisa. However, the painting had a long and torrid history before finally coming to rest in the Louvre. Click Next to hear more. The Benedictines of the San Giorgio Maggiore Monastery in Venice commissioned this immense painting in 1562 to decorate their new refectory. The contract concerning the undertaking of the wedding feast was extremely precise. The monks insisted that the work be monumental in order to fill the entire end wall of the refectory. Hung at a height of 2.5 meters from the ground, it was designed to create an illusion of extended space. This work, measuring 22 feet by 32 feet, occupied Veronese the painter for 15 months, most likely with the assistance of his brother, Benedetto Cagliari. The commission was a turning point in Veronese's career. After the painting's success, other religious communities would soon clamor for a similar work in their own monasteries. To hear more, click Next. From the 16th to the 18th centuries, for 235 years, the painting decorated the refectory of the church of San Giorgio Maggiore until the 11th of September, 1797, when soldiers of Napoleon's French Revolutionary Army plundered this picture as war booty during the Italian campaigns of the French Revolutionary Wars. In 1798, along with other plundered works of art, the 235-year-old painting was stored in the first floor of the Louvre Museum. 5 years later, in 1803, that store of looted art had become the Musée Napoléon, the personal art collection of the future Emperor of France. In the early 19th century, after the Napoleonic Wars, the repatriation and restitution of looted works of art was integral to the post-Napoleonic conciliation treaties. However, the prejudiced curator of the Musée Napoléon, Vivant Denon, falsely claimed that Veronese's canvas was too fragile to travel from Paris to Venice, and Canova excluded the wedding feast at Canna from repatriation to Italy, and in its stead sent to Venice the feast at the house of Simon by Charles Le Brun. In the late 19th century, during the Franco-Prussian War, the wedding feast at Canna, then 308 years old, was stored in a box at Brest in Brittany. In the 20th century, during the Second World War, the 382-year-old painting was rolled up for storage and continually transported to hiding places throughout the south of France, lest Veronese's art become part of the Nazi plunder stolen during the 12-year existence of the Third Reich. It remained hidden until after World War II had ended. In 1989, the Louvre Museum began a painting restoration of the wedding feast at Canna, and it has remained in the Louvre ever since. Click next to hear about the painting's artist, Paolo Veronese. The painting, The Wedding at Canna, was created in the early 1560s by Paolo Veronese. He was an Italian artist who was very influential during the Renaissance. Emblematic of the Venetian school, Veronese was a superb colorist, usually painting elaborate narrative cycles in a dramatic mannerist style. The figures in his works are often described as having the subtle foreshortening of Correggio and Michelangelo's heroism. Please click next to hear more about Paolo Veronese. Paolo Veronese is noted for his enormous banquet scenes, such as The Last Supper, Feast in the House of Simon, Supper in the House of Gregory the Great, Feast in the House of Levi, and of course, Wedding Feast at Canna. These large decorative paintings, modern versions of the old telera or scuola paintings, gave Veronese ample opportunity to demonstrate his virtuoso figure painting and use of color, and establish him as one of the great contributors to Venetian painting of the 16th century. During his mature period, he managed to combine the colorism of Titian with the monumental forms used in Rome to create a sumptuous style of painting decorated with dazzling costumes and color. To hear more about the Wedding Feast at Canna, click next. The theme of the painting is based on the Bible story found in John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, concerning a marriage held in Canna, Galilee, attended by Mary, Jesus, and his disciples. Towards the end of the wedding feast, the wine begins to run out. Jesus asks that stone jars be filled with water, which he then turns into wine. This episode is a precursor of the Eucharist and was a popular theme during the Italian Renaissance and during the Mannerist era. However, unlike most conventional interpretations, Veronese transposed the Bible story to the more modern setting of a typically extravagant Venetian wedding. To hear more about the wedding feast at Canna, click next. The Wedding at Canna is Veronese's great masterpiece of biblical art, and arguably one of the most modern religious paintings of the Cinquecento. The huge work, which is roughly 22 by 32 feet, was commissioned in 1562, which, helped by his brother Benedetto Cagliari, Veronese completed in 15 months. The artist's fee was 324 ducats, plus board and lodging, as well as a barrel of wine. Veronese's Wedding Feast at Canna combines elements of several different styles, adapting the Venetian colorito philosophy of Titian to the compositional disegno of the High Renaissance. To this, he added one or two characteristics of Mannerism, as well as a quantity of allegorical and symbolic features. The content of the painting also consists of a complex mixture of the religious and secular, the theatrical and the mundane, the European and the Oriental. Depicted in the grand style of contemporary Venetian society, the banquet takes place within a courtyard flanked by Doric and Corinthian columns and bordered by a low balustrade. To hear more about different sections of the painting, simply click on that portion of the painting. The diners at the nuptial table. who are all waiting for their wine to be served for the dessert course of their meal, includes the bride and groom, who are seated at the left end of the table, Jesus Christ, who is seated at the center of the table, Mary and the apostles on his sides, along with a bewildering array of royalty, noblemen, officials, clerks, servants, and others, who represent a cross-section of Venetian society and are dressed variously in biblical, Venetian, or Oriental outfits and adorned with sumptuous coiffures and items of jewelry. Numerous historical figures appear in the wedding feast at Canna, including Emperor Charles V, Eleanor of Austria, Francis I of France, Mary I of England, Suleiman the Magnificent, Vittoria Colonna, Giulia Gonzaga, Cardinal Pole, Sokulu Mehmet Pasa. In all, some 130 unique figures are depicted in this painting. The wedding feast at Canna contains a multitude of symbolism. The entire work symbolizes the interplay between earthly pleasure and earthly mortality, specifically in a biblical sphere. Behind the balustrade, above the figure of Jesus, an animal is being slaughtered, an allusion to the forthcoming sacrifice of Jesus as the Lamb of God, a reference which is supported by the dog who is chewing a bone at the foot of the painting. Meanwhile, to the left of Jesus, the Virgin Mary cups her hands to represent a glass that will contain the new wine, the blood of Christ. While much of this magnificent work of Christian art is devoted to expressing the joy of life, as well as the achievements and splendors of the Venetian Republic, Veronese is careful to place Jesus center stage. In fact, not only is the haloed Christ given the prime position in the central span of the banquet table, but he is the only figure in the entire canvas who looks directly at the viewer. Here's an interesting fact. While many figures in the picture interact with one another, none of them are actually speaking. This is in order to comply with the code of silence observed by all of the Benedictine monks in the refectory where the painting was first commissioned to hang. The detail that Veronese accomplishes in this painting is astonishing. Above Jesus, on the elevated walkway on the other side of the balustrade, a butcher is cutting up meat, while a porter on the right arrives with more supplies. At the foot of the picture, a barefoot manservant on the right pours red wine from a large ornate cask into a pitcher. Standing behind the servant, studying the contents of his wineglass, is Benedetto Cagliari, Veronese's brother who helped him complete the painting. A black-skinned servant boy, off to the far left, offers a glass of wine to the bridegroom. Behind him, a dwarf is holding a bright green parrot. Note the detail of the cutlery and dishes, all laid out on the table. Each place setting consists of a napkin, knife, and fork. Take note of the little brown and white dog standing on the table to the right of Benedetto Cagliari. There are also dogs in the top left, one poking its nose through the balustrade. There is also a cat on the right, playing on its back. In the distance can be seen an arcaded tower designed by the Padua-born architect Andrea Palladio. In the center foreground, a group of musicians are playing various instruments. The musical figures include the four great painters of Venice, Veronese himself, who is dressed in white, playing the viola da gamba, Jacopo Bassano, who is playing the flute, Tintoretto, who is playing the violin, and Titian, who is dressed in red and playing the violoncello. Veronese's Renaissance color palette makes a massive contribution to the power and grandeur of the painting, and to the delineation and characterization of its figures. His glowing colors include the hugely expensive lapis lazuli blues, imported along the Silk Route from the mines of Afghanistan, as well as yellow oranges, burning reds, verdigris blue greens, Due to a recent 3-year restoration program at the Louvre, many of the hues have regained their original brilliance. Here's an interesting fact. Peter Paul Rubens, another great colorist painter who was alive during the era of Baroque painting, owned a number of pictures by Veronese which he kept in his studio, which is a testimony to the true dedication to colorism that Veronese had in every one of his paintings. Press next to hear about the reception of the painting. Veronese's interpretation of the biblical story of the wedding at Canna caused a huge scandal among Venetian society. His emphasis on the hedonistic aspects of a marriage banquet at the expense of the pious aspects of the occasion ran counter to the religious sensibilities of the 16th century in the Republic of Venice. Undeterred by the controversy, Veronese produced an equally contentious Last Supper in 1573, the first Last Supper painting of his career, which so offended public taste that a tribunal of the Inquisition ordered him to make a number of alterations. He refused and simply retitled the painting The Feast in the House of Levi, which now hangs in the Venice Academy Gallery. To view the painting The Feast in the House of Levi once more, go back to slide 7. If you wish to continue, click Next. These are simple reconsiderations of what Venetian society would have looked like at the time. These paintings were not commissioned as literal recreations of the Venetian reaction to Veronese's Supper in the House of Levi. Though the painting is to remain in the Louvre for the foreseeable time, it is still traveling the globe and affecting the art world even now. Advances in 3D animation and special effects technology have provided a unique new opportunity. British filmmaker Peter Greenaway has created a digital version of The Wedding at Canna. Currently on view at the Palladian Refectory of San Giorgio Maggiore Island, the multimedia extravaganza attempts to place the viewer in the midst of the throng of wedding guests. In the middle of all of the beautiful Doric and Corinthian architecture, amidst the lapis lazuli skies that make up Veronese's spectacular composition. Peter Greenaway's cinematic reproduction has savvy interplay of images, lighting, music, voices, and sounds which seem to emerge directly from the high-tech replica of the painting and the walls of the refectory. The performance is 50 minutes long, and it gives the spectators the illusion of attending an actual marriage feast at Canna, where Christ accomplishes his first miracle as narrated in the Gospel of John. During the projection, Greenaway points out to the public the painting's scores of characters, from the servants preparing dishes to the banquet guests and their imagined conversations and gossip, to the guests of honor, Jesus Christ and his mother Mary, seated at the center of the painting's architectural composition. In an ongoing crescendo culminating in the narration's crucial moment, the miracle of water turning into wine, the wedding feast at Canna continues to enchant viewers even now. If you have any further questions about the wedding at Canna, our staff of docents will be happy to answer them all virtually through the chat box that will be available at the end of the presentation. Thank you for coming to Virtual Tours at the Louvre. À bientôt!